Greetings, salutations to Safe to Serve International and first-time viewers. Welcome to this midday power surge, your spiritual oasis on this pilgrim journey. I'm your host, Andrew Henriquez. It's clear the themes we'll be covering today for our midday power surge session. And as you can see, there are several themes. Number one, choose one. Financial slavery from your government or from private bankers. And if you take a look carefully in that description, you'll see a question. Which one do you prefer? Tyrannical surveillance and financial slavery from your government or from private bankers? Which one do you prefer? Well, if you are a sensible civilian, resident, and citizen, even a Christian, you would say none of the above. The reality is this. We are heading into a crisis wherein one of the above will be implemented in America very soon. Breaking news, U.S. lawmakers are preparing to launch a digital dollar, just in time for the mark of the beast crisis being enforced. And today, I do have a special guest, Marie Diaz from Eyes on the Times, and she's here to give us the current event as it is fulfilling end-time prophecies, as well as the practical, spiritual, financial work of preparation. Marie Diaz, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Pastor. It's great to be back.
Without further ado, let's get right into it. What are you focusing on?
Right, as you just said, the United States is introducing a digital dollar bill, and we're going to take a deep dive this morning, and we're going to uncover what all of this means for us today.
Let's get into it.
All right. So we're going to begin by looking briefly at what we discussed last week. We talked about the fact that nations all across the world are implementing a CBDC. And most recently, we talked about how the European Union is establishing their CBDC. So let's just take a look at this first article here. And it says the ECB, or the European Central Bank, targets October to finish digital euro preparation phase. And of course, they have been discussing rolling out this central bank digital currency over there. And so she has set out that in October of 2025 is the official rollout date. And so let's take a listen to this clip from Christine Lagarde, where she's going to discuss this very fact.
Here it is.
I tend to share your views. Nature doesn't like vacuum. And we started working on the digital euro way back, actually when I started my term 5.5 years ago. And I'm not claiming, parentality on the digital euro, because my colleague Benoit Cœuré had already committed a speech on this matter before I arrived. But I certainly carried on with that project, and subsequently Fabio Panetta on the board, and then Piero Cipollone, who has replaced Fabio, have taken the lead together with a very, very good team, which is focused on accelerating the pace and hopefully campaigning enough with all the stakeholders, meaning European Parliament, meaning European Council, meaning European Commission, so that we can eventually, not put to bed, but put to reality this digital euro. The deadline for us is going to be October of 25, and we are getting ready for that deadline. But
It's clear, Marie.
It is. And so, as I just mentioned, the European Union isn't the only nation that is implementing these CBDCs. There are a lot of other smaller nations that are also introducing this CBDC. And so, of course, the United States then is put into a quandary, right? Because, and we'll kind of delve into that a little bit later, but what we're going to see is that the US is opposed to rolling out a CBDC. And so President Trump has to figure out some way to be able to transition into a digital platform without introducing a CBDC. And so right now we're just going to take a clip, listen to a clip so that we can see why many of the conservatives and others are opposed to a CBDC, and we'll discuss it thereafter.
Here it is.
I do want to talk with you for a moment about CBDCs and some of the push that the Biden administration had. They did an executive order for Treasury to research development of a CBDC in the United States. And of course, this causes a lot of us heartburn because we look at what the CCP did with the digital yuan in connection with the Olympics. So upon confirmation, how would you approach this discussion of CBDCs? And are you for them or against them? Could you end the Biden administration project to create a U.S.-based CBDC?
Senator Blackburn, thank you for your remarks. I may have a little trouble disciplining the two behind me, as I'm sure that I will hear that a U.S. Senator has vouched for their behavior.
Yes.
But on CBDCs, I see no reason for the U.S. to have a central bank digital currency.
And for those who don't know, that's Scott Bessent, and it's actually the Trump administration's Treasury Secretary. So when he speaks with authority in this area of finance. Marie.
Right. And Pastor, we have discussed, many times before the reason why we're opposed to a CBDC as well. And she also outlined those points there, namely because they're looking at how tyrannical or the powers that a CBDC will give to a government. And she's looking at what's happening there in China and how they're able to manipulate the population with the use of these CBDCs. And so what you just saw there is, the confirmed U.S. Secretary, Treasurer of Secretary, just said that there's no need for the United States to establish a central bank digital currency. And now, prior to President Trump's election, he had promised his base that he also is opposed to a CBDC, and he kind of told them that he would outright ban it. And so let's take a look at this article here to see what he has had to say with regards to a central bank digital currency. The headline says, "Tyranny. Trump vows to block any federal efforts to launch a digital currency." It says former President Donald Trump said that if elected, he would not allow the Federal Reserve to create a digital dollar. Now, I think that's important, and I want to underscore that point because he specifically pointed out the Federal Reserve is the one that he is going to block from being able to create this central bank digital currency. And of course, following his election, he made good on his promise. If you look at this headline, this is actually coming from the official government webpage. It says, "Strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology." And of course, if you read through here, it says the agencies are hereby prohibited from undertaking any action to establish, issue, or promote a CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States or abroad. And of course, it goes on. The other portion says, any ongoing plans or initiatives at any agency related to the creation of a CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States shall be immediately terminated. So, of course, like I said, he just made good on his promise, and he said that he's not going to implement a CBDC. So, Pastor, of course, we can kind of just, breathe a sigh of relief, right? There's no need to worry because we're not going to establish a CBDC, correct?
Exactly. And that's just for those who are ignorant of what is coming. So they terminate the CBDC only to implement something else, which I'm going to allow you to pronounce, announce, and break that news. Before we go there, Marie, let's play 2 clips where he actually said that. Clip number 1, no CBDCs. Fix the audio on this one, preacher. I think the audio is somewhat poor. Clip 1 of 2. Yeah, I think it's coming through one channel. Do you hear it, preacher? No, you don't hear it? No? Nothing? Okay. All right, clip 2. The first clip was when he was on the campaign trail. No CBDCs, he said. Clip 2.
The order ensures banking services for crypto companies are protected. It also bans the creation of a central bank digital currency, CBDC, in the US, arguing it could compete with existing cryptocurrencies.
There it is. Okay, Marie.
Right. And of course, so like I said, now President Trump is presented with this dilemma, right? Because the world as a whole is transitioning over into this digital financial infrastructure, and the United States is kind of on the borders. And like I said, he just created this ban against the CBDCs. So we're going to take a look at an article that's just going to confirm this. This is coming from Reuters. It says Trump's digital dollar ban gives China and Europe CBDC free rein. Donald Trump's rapid move to ban a digital dollar has left the field wide open, observers say, for China and Europe to make their already advanced central bank digital currency, a CBDC, prototypes into global standards setters. While the United States has long seemed reluctant to turn the world's #1 reserve currency digital, the fact that it is now the only country to impose a presidential ban on such an asset is hard to ignore. And so again, going back to what we had discussed during our previous presentation last week, and if you haven't seen that, I really encourage you to go back and take a look at that. One of the things that they noted is that 86% of the nation's central bank are looking to implement a CBDC, right? And so one of the reasons, again, why they're opposed to this is because a CBDC affords the government the opportunity to be able to surveil and track their users, right? And so President Trump has to figure out what he's going to do to be able to implement the same system and avoid kind of an overt idea where people are going to be able to see that the same system that he's going to implement is going to do the exact same thing that a CBDC would do. And so what has President Trump decided to do? He's decided to establish, stable coins. And of course, Pastor, many people believe that this no buying, no selling system is something that's way off into the future, right? And we've been trumpeting the horn here, been telling people that it's coming. And here we are, on the precipice of this system going into effect.
So in actuality, people breathed a sigh of relief when President Trump said no CBDCs. And they thought, okay, no surveillance, no traceable money, none of it. No financial slavery, only for him now to say, okay, no to CBDC and yes to stable coins. You see, friends, understand this. The CBDC is government backed. The stable coins, private bankers. That's what we're seeing here. And if you notice, the CBDC would fit a Democrat platform. Big government. Come on, friends, think about it. Democrats, big government. But the Republicans, what? Small government. Privatize everything. So one is CBDC and the other is a stable coin. They're both cryptocurrencies, digital money. Both are traceable, programmable. Marie, take it away.
Yes. And so what we're going to see now is that they're already working on this legislation. I mean, I found out about this earlier this week, but I found that they have been working on this at least for a month or two. And so it's already passed through some of the, through the Senate. And so, like I said, we're going to delve into this. We're kind of behind schedule, but let's take a look at this headline here. It says Trump addresses Digital Asset Summit, urges Congress to pass stablecoin, right? Okay, and we're going to listen to a few clips, again, where you're going to hear President Trump as well as the current U.S. Treasury Secretary discuss what they're looking to do. Let's take a listen to those clips.
Clip 1.
I've also called on Congress to pass landmark legislation creating simple, common sense rules for stablecoins and market structure. With the right legal framework, institutions large and small will be liberated to invest, innovate, and take part in one of the most exciting technological revolutions in modern history. It's so big, it's, I think, as big as you can get. Pioneers like you will be able to improve our banking and payment system and promote greater privacy, safety, security, and wealth for American consumers and businesses alike.
Like he said, this is huge, right? It is going to completely revolutionize the banking system. But let's take a listen to the second clip here.
Clip 2.
And we are going to put a lot of thought into the stablecoin regime. And as President Trump has directed, we are going to keep the U.S. the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stablecoins to do that. Thank you.
Now, he used some very interesting language there, if you caught it. He talked about using the stablecoin regime. And now, when you think of regime, you think of authoritarian, right? And so just want to kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we're moving forward here. But as he stated, the purpose or the reason why they're doing this is because they want to continue to keep the U.S. dollar as the dominant reserve currency, okay? And so again, he can't do that if, we're still using this same outdated, fiat system while everybody else is using a digital system. And so the next article is, again, going to reiterate the fact that they're going to establish these stable coins, but it's going to tell you emphatically that a stable coin is, in fact, a digital dollar. So let's take a look at this article here. It says, this is how we protect U.S. dollar dominance in the digital age. It says, history will record Washington's embrace of digital assets. Listen to this year as an inflection point for the next era of the U.S. dollar dominance. Lord have mercy. Both the Trump administration and Congress are prioritizing an America First approach to the blockchain, ensuring we are the ones defining how this new digital assets are used, traded, and created at home and abroad. If the dollar is to be the currency of the digital age, then Washington must act to make that happen. So, how clear is that? They are telling you that the introduction of this digital asset is an inflection point or a turning point or a pivotal point in U.S. history. Why? Because we're transitioning from a digital system, not in 2027, not in 2030, but this year, brothers and sisters. I don't know if you want to chime in here, Pastor.
If I want to chime in, I want to give a trumpet call. It's time to implement these 5 keys of survival. And so in Europe, Marie, their deadline is October 2025. In America, their version is this year, sometime this year. Only God can hold back this money of the beast system so that we can have enough time to get prepared, alert, and get others ready for what is coming. Now, later on, I'm going to come back to this blockchain. Whatever Trump is going to put in place with Congress, that means it's not just executive order. Again, an executive order policy without Congress approval many times. But this is the Trump administration, White House, and Congress. A digital dollar this year. Marie, take it away. Remember, I'll come back to blockchain.
Of course, and I know that sometimes some people may start to panic and say it's happening this year. Of course, they have to lay the foundation. They have to set up the system, right? But should we wait until they set up the system before we start, moving and doing the things that we need to do? We need to step fast right now. And so again, as I mentioned, we're going to prove that the stablecoin is in fact a digital dollar. And this next portion here discloses that. It says the Senate Banking Committee just advanced a first of its kind legislation for one key part of the blockchain ecosystem, stablecoins, in a landslide 18-6 vote. The House appears ready to follow with its version. So you see both houses are on the same page. But here, that line here says stable coins our digital dollars. So there it is in black and white. There's no ambiguity there. You can see clearly that the United States is already, not just planning, already laying the foundation for them to implement this digital dollar here. And so, we have a couple of articles which, is going to confirm the deadline that, and they're moving with lightning speed. Let's take a look at a few articles here. This is coming from Forbes. This is Congress moves towards passing stablecoin legislation. It says history was made in the Senate last week when the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee voted 18-6 to advance a bill that would create a regulatory framework for stablecoins. The measure was the first time a Senate committee passed a major crypto bill, a signal of lawmakers' serious intent to push significant crypto legislation into law. There it is again this year. And so again, I'm just going to continue reiterating that this is already taking place. The next article here says legislators push to move crypto laws within Trump's first 100 days. Lord have mercy. A group of lawmakers said Tuesday that Congress will pass legislation on stablecoin in the first 100 days of Trump's administration. Again, in this one from Fortune, it tells you, again, it says Trump holds long-awaited crypto summit, calls for bill on his desk before August. And so, of course, it has to go into the House and into the Senate, but he's looking for them to have some sort of bill placed onto his desk in August. Mind you, this is 2 months ahead of when the European Union is planning to roll out their CBDC, which is in October of 2025.
Marie, continue.
Okay.
Lay it out. Lay it out.
All right. So now what we're going to see here is we're going to transition here in this presentation. But before I do that, also, and I think, Pastor, you alluded to this a little bit, I want to make the distinction between the stable coins and a central bank digital currency. Now, stable coins are decentralized and they're managed by private companies, okay? Whereas a CBDC is a digital currency that is issued and regulated directly by the government central bank, right? So now we're going to prove that although a stable coin and a CBDC differ in how they're distributed, because one is, like I said, privatized and the other one is distributed by the government. In functionality, they are the same. It's the exact same thing. The only difference is who is giving you the digital dollar, right? And they both, like I said, work the same way. Everything that you can do with a central bank digital currency, you can do with a stable coin. And we're going to see that in some of the articles that we're going to present here. And what I also want to say is that because a stable coin is coming from a private company, to me, it's worse than if it were coming from the government, because the government is held to the U.S. Constitution and to other frameworks, right? But if you have a private company, the government can't tell a private company how they can operate their company, right? And so they are afforded, or they can become quite draconian because it's out of their jurisdiction. But again, I'm kind of running ahead of myself. As we go through these articles, you'll see exactly what I'm saying here. So let's just take a look here.
Marie.
Yes, sir.
Just think about quid pro quo. Everybody, quid pro quo. Just imagine on the surface, we saw what, I'm going to make a connection between the religious side with Trump and the financial side with Trump. In the open, we see how the church leaders have a quid pro quo with Trump. If you elect me, Trump said, I'll do this for you. That's in the open. That's not conspiracy theory. Just imagine the private bankers in some clandestine meeting, in some back room, in some penthouse apartment office building. Listen, if we back you financially, Trump, we want you to do this. Just imagine that. Marie, take it away.
Mercy. Very solemn, right? And isn't it interesting that during President Trump's inauguration, he had all of the oligarchs, all of the tech companies, all of, and of course, you're not going to see the big wigs, all sitting by, because of course, they don't want you to know their connection with them. But as you rightly stated, I mean, they're all in bed with each other. It's about, the companies that make money. And we know that the love of money is the root of all evil. And so what won't they do, given the right price? But let's take a look at this headline here. It says, the Genius stablecoin bill is a CBDC Trojan horse. And of course, the Genius, the name of the bill is called Genius, is a stablecoin bill that has been introduced to the law that the lawmakers are currently working on. The article continues. The recent Genius stable bill in the U.S. is merely a thinly veiled attempt to usher in central bank digital currencies. Currency controls through privatized means. This is exactly what we've been talking about. It says the U.S. government will punish stablecoin issuers that do not comply with the new regulatory framework. So let's just pause there for a moment. Because, like I said, these private companies have to receive permission from the U.S. government to be able to issue the digital assets or the digital currency, right? They have to abide by the rules of the government. So in essence, the government still holds the reins, even though somebody else, a third party, is doling out the digital assets. I'm not sure if that's clear for everyone. But it just goes to show that if the government establishes, rules and regulations that are draconian, that the companies can then, again, do whatever they desire to do, because they want to be able to receive permission to be able to give out the digital currencies. And so, like I said, the point that I'm really driving is just to show that regardless to who's giving it out, the government still stands at the top of the scheme, and they're the ones that give you the permission to be able to use it.
Continue.
And so, and so now, sometimes, when I'm looking at some of these things, I tremble because I'm looking and I'm wondering if God's people, if we see it, I know that sometimes I may not necessarily understand, and I have to ask God to give us heavenly eyesight to be able to see really what's taking place. But let's take a look here at the rest of this article. It says, the government realizes that if they control stablecoins, they can control financial transactions. Working with centralized stablecoin issuers means they can freeze funds anytime they want. Essentially, what a CBDC would allow. So why bother creating a CBDC? Do you see it's the exact same thing? With stablecoins under the government control, the result is the same, with the false veneer of decentralized added as a bonus. And of course, because, I was wondering, I was like, why is it that there are so many conservatives that have embraced cryptocurrency and Bitcoin? And then President Trump just recently established a reserve. And I'm like, I don't get it. And like I said, it's because I don't have a very deep knowledge of these things. And so as I was just mentioning, I pray and I'm like, Lord, what does this mean? And so the Lord providentially shows us clearly that what they're doing, and of course, it's an ingenious way of bringing in conservatives, right? Because as we mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, they're not going to go for a CBDC. But if you tell them that it's decentralized, that it's going through a private company, no, you don't have to worry about big government. They're going to go ahead and embrace it. But here we are. We see that this movement is on foot where they're establishing a digital currency.
Carry on, Marie.
Right. And, the other thing I just wanted to mention, even on this point here, is that, the Bible says that my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, and another place, Jesus, I think it was Luke 19, if I'm not mistaken, where he talks about because we didn't know the time, right? And how we're caught up in these snares. And this is why I'm so grateful for Midday Power Surge. Because there's so much information that we're being given, right? And sometimes, when we present these things, people may think that the intent is to scare people. It isn't to scare anyone. Think about it. You don't think that a meteorologist is trying to scare you when they tell you that a hurricane is coming, right? They tell you in advance so that you can make the necessary preparations so that you can be prepared, so that you can board up your home or you can evacuate. That is the purpose of us introducing or talking about these things, so that you can make the necessary preparation and realize that you don't have 2-3 years to get into the country to come off of the system. But this is something that we need to do right now. And so now we're going to transition here. And this is when we're going to listen to a clip. And this is coming from Catherine Fitts. And for those of you who don't know, Catherine Fitts, she was a part of former President Herbert Walker Bush's administration. And so this is somebody that's way up there. She clearly knows what she's talking about. And she's going to reaffirm the same things that we're telling you here based on the previous article. So let's take a listen to that clip here.
Catherine Fitts.
You look at how they're setting up the regulatory structure in the Genius Act, it looks like it's just a retail CBDC. In other words, but the banks are going to run it.
It explains so many things. They're abandoning CBDC. They're pushing stablecoin. They're pushing crypto. They're pushing the dollar. And they're pushing control. It ticks off so many boxes. It's amazing.
If you look at digital money and an all digital monetary system, it's, in a sense, it's no different than a CBDC.
It's better than a CBDC because it's run through private parties.
Right.
There's no transparency.
There's no transparency, and they have no legal obligation, and Congress doesn't begin to have the jurisdiction over them.
Mercy.
Did you catch that? She said that Congress has no jurisdiction over the private companies. And I wanted to give us like a real concrete way of looking at that, right? Now, through the US Constitution, we have rights and privileges, right? We have the freedom of speech. We have all sorts of things, right? And Pastor, often you call it you woke, right? We have those rights, but when you're using a private company's system, they get to dictate what is or isn't okay, right? And so you may have freedom of speech, but when you get onto you woke, you can't just say whatever you want to say. You can't oppose their agenda or things that they think you ought to listen to or things that they think is important for you to understand. If you go against the grain, they have every right to say that you can't use their platform. So now think of that same system dictating whether or not you have access to digital assets, to a digital dollar.
Your money.
Exactly. We didn't include it in the article, but you can do a Google search and you can see that the Bank of America is actually looking to, they're waiting until Congress actually passes the legislation, but they're looking to establish their own stable coin, right? And so the government can then say, yes, you have permission to disperse, these digital dollars. I don't know about you, but many conservatives have been debanked from Bank of America or defrocked. What are you going to do when all of these companies, this is why Sister White was opposed to monopolies, right? Because the monopolies have gotten to be so big. And if the government is working through just a few companies, how are you going to be able to transact? This is why we have to see these movements and understand that we have to come off of the system.
Do you know what's striking? You just mentioned Bank of America in the points you just made. This morning, doing the research to come live in this lesson here, I actually punched into Google bank closings, banks that are closing. Those of you who are right now here with us live, if you can, just go on a second platform. Go to Google and type in banks closing. Hit go. 145 banks shut down across America in the last 5 weeks. Banking centers, face-to-face, shut down. I wonder why. Because everything is being moved online, digital. Now, we aren't opposed to a digital platform as long as we still have other options. But when they drive everything to a digital platform, then they have control of everything. Marie, continue. And one of those banks is Bank of America. Major national bank closing, dozens of branches. The locations are revealed. It's right there in front of us. BOA closing banks. Continue.
Right. So now we're going to take a listen to a clip, and this is coming from Whitney Webb. And those of you who aren't familiar with her, she is an accomplished independent investigative journalist. I love her work, and she, exposes a lot of the things that are taking place through, CBDCs and stablecoins. But we're going to take a listen to a clip where she is going to discuss how they could potentially transition us into this new digital infrastructure. So let's take a listen to that.
Here it is.
So, for example, let's say this cyber attack on the banks takes place, and they say, well, the existing money in your account has disappeared. The hackers took it, but we can return to you the exact same amount of money you had, but it won't be in the dollars you had before. It will be in USDC or this dollar-backed stablecoin, or it will be this token. So you can get an equivalent amount of money back, right, from the money that was stolen from you, but it has to be this new money. It has to be part of this new system. There's the potential here for people to steal money from you and then essentially give it back to you, but with new conditions and with a new social contract. Yeah. You voluntarily accepted this new system and voluntarily onboarded to this new paradigm. But it's a coercion to an extreme degree. All of your money was stolen, right? And now you can only get it back if you take it in the form of the digital dollars that we approve of, or the CBDC, depending on where you are,
Now, Marie, I simply cut this clip into 3 parts. So each part will be able to be crystallized on the minds of the listeners and the viewers right now. Leave this indelible mark upon their minds, unforgettable. Did we just hear what she said? Clip 2.
And the other thing that I'm really concerned about as it relates to, a coming economic crisis is that I think we're going to see a major effort to saddle American consumers with programmable, surveillable money and seizable money. And so, of course, a lot of people for years now have been very concerned about central bank digital currencies or CBDCs. But there are also things issued by the private sector, like stablecoins, for example, that are just as programmable and surveillable and seizable as CBDCs are.
And then she's going to mention what type of surveillable money? The stablecoins. Clip 2.
So I think it's very likely in the event of a major debt crisis or some sort of crisis that damages significantly regular Americans' purchasing power, there will be an effort to onboard Americans onto one of those 2 versions of programmable, surveillable money. So it's possible, if Kamala wins, we could see a CBDC or something like that. But in the case of Trump, he's sort of come out in favor of stablecoins. He did that recently at his speech at the Bitcoin conference earlier this year. And, stablecoins are just as programmable and surveillable and seizable as CBDCs in theory are. And I think those, as people have rightly pointed out, are a threat to our financial privacy and ultimately our financial freedom. So,
Marie, do you want to jump inside here before I go to clip 3?
Sure. So, some of the points that I wanted to draw here is that she is saying all it takes is the right crisis, the right financial crisis to take place, and then they will transition you to the system. She particularly mentioned a cyber attack, and haven't we been seeing this all over the place, right? Whether it's in the airline industry, in banking, internet, phone lines, everywhere. And in addition to that, we've been told through the World Economic Forum that we ought to expect a cyber pandemic as well. So it isn't that far-fetched to believe that on the horizon, there could potentially be some orchestrated cyber attack that will then assist in transitioning us to this digital system. There was one other point that I wanted to draw, the fact that we're also in the middle of what could potentially be a recession. Last week we discussed the fact that President Trump talked about how he would not say that there isn't a possibility that we could enter into a recession. So all of these things are playing at the same time while they're discussing rolling out CBDCs. And so I think it's important for your audience to bear that in mind as we're looking at these things.
Let's play the 3rd clip to close off this segment of her speech. And then I want to ask a very imperative question. Here it is.
People should be focusing not just on CBDCs, but also, these other, digital currencies that have the potential to offer those same, Orwellian functionalities to the people, issuing them and producing them.
Do you want to close off here, Marie, and let me draw the question?
Sure. The only thing that I really want to say here is that there is that misconception that conservatives and others who are embracing Bitcoin and all of these things, remember, it's all digital money, right? And so in a flick of a switch, you've lost your money. And so this idea that because it's decentralized or because it's coming from a private company somehow means it's less draconian is a misconception. And we want to be able to, remove that veneer so that everyone can see the danger with these stable coins.
And that's exactly where I was going with the question. Number one, just imagine, Marie, if we were brought into the public sphere and the public square and speaking to the so-called conservative wing who denounce the CBDCs but exalt the cryptocurrencies, i.e. the stable coins from President Trump, not realizing that it does the same thing. Surveillance, loss of financial freedom runs contrary to your financial security. But now notice, Marie, imagine if we were brought on a podcast. We are brought into the circles of people such as Whitney Webb and Catherine Fitz. They can see clearly the danger of CBDC, government control issued, all right? But it takes away financial freedom. Now they can also see the dangers, the tyranny of the stable coins being pushed by President Trump because it's being issued by private bankers. So they have seen it, but just to an extent. They don't know who's behind, who is on top, who controls the private bankers. Imagine, Marie, if we were to ask them, Whitney Webb, Catherine Fitz, and those in that circle, whose eyes are being opened, do you believe in the Bible? And they say yes. End-time prophecies? Yes, we do. What if I were to show you from Scripture the power behind the private bankers? Would you want to see it? Would you believe it? I want to see it, they might say. I would believe it because it's from the Bible. Imagine, Marie, if we bring them to Revelation 18 and we read verse 2, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. We read verse 3, that the merchants of the earth are waxed rich because of Babylon. You look in the eyes, Marie, of Whitney Webb and Catherine Fitz. Who would you call the merchants of the earth today? What would be their response, Marie?
Well, all of those who are going to, give out the digital assets,
These are the private bankers.
Exactly.
All right. And then we say, who is behind them? Who makes them rich? Who is at the top of the financial food chain, quote unquote? It's Babylon. And then, Marie, I could just see us leaning over on the table in their presence, in their direction. Do you know who Babylon is? Do you want to know who Babylon is? You are a professional in your field. You do deep research, Catherine Fitz and Whitney Webb. Do you know who Babylon is? Do you want a thorough research to see who Babylon is? What do you think they might say, Marie?
Of course they would want
Sure.
to know.
And then we say, give us 5 minutes. And we begin to walk it down through Scripture to identify ancient Babylon. And you come now to modern Babylon, and their eyes are open. Wait a minute, you mean Babylon in the primary sense is popery? That would be a fulfillment of Great Controversy, page 606. Then we can truly say, come out of her, my people. Come out of her, my people. Imagine the influence of Catherine Fitz and Whitney Webb have in their circle. And once they receive this truth, they cannot go on their platforms in print, videos, audio programs, and share this with others to warn them, come out from Babylon system. Not only will they identify the private bankers and merchants, but now they can show the world who makes them rich. It's Babylon. It's Babylon. And then we can show them Daniel 3, Marie, verse 2, ancient Babylon. Marie,
Yes.
I wonder if they would realize that in order for King Nebuchadnezzar to preserve the fall of Babylon, he made sure he controlled the treasurers. Daniel 3, verse 2. And he erected an actual image of all gold. Do you remember what Trump just did with the image of gold and a head of gold? And then you bring them now to Revelation 18. And you show them verse 13. After you show them Babylon is appropriate, you go to verse 13. And when they read in verse 13 of chapter 18 of Revelation, and they realize the merchants who are made rich by Babylon, they will enslave the bodies and souls of men. Just imagine what Whitney Webb will then say. Catherine Fitz would then say. Just imagine them saying, we have never seen this before. Of course, we believe they're sincere. And if truth is presented, they would wholeheartedly accept it, get in harmony with God's word, and impart that to others. How many eyes could we open, Marie? So this is my prayer. This is my end goal. One of my visions for Midday Power Surge, to get into these circles, to show them further light, current events fulfilling end time prophecies. Any thoughts, Marie?
Well, when you're talking about, the souls of men, and bringing them into slavery, of course, Catherine Fitz has made remarks about, this prison, right? And so they clearly, like you said, Pastor, they can see the trajectory. They can see where these things are going. They just need someone with that heavenly eye salve to be able to put those pieces together. And, Pastor, the same way that the Lord blessed you to be able to interview Alex Newman, I believe that by God's grace, he will open up the door for you to be able to speak to Catherine Fitz or Whitney Webb or Glenn Beck or, others. Maybe that's something that we should bring before the Lord during our next, all-night prayer, because we know that God is able and that God wants this message to go forth. And again, this is why it's important for us to discuss these current events, because this is what's on the minds of those that are in the world. So woe to us if we're not able to discern what's happening and apply it to Bible prophecy.
Marie, to confirm what you just said, to deal with the cynics, the mockers, and scoffers who are saying, oh, you're too ambitious. You're too proud and prideful. Did God not use 4 Hebrews, which also included Daniel, to speak to the king of the world's superpower Babylon, Daniel 2, and speak about money and the rise and fall of nations? Head of gold, silver, that's monetary value. Rise and fall of nations. God did that. And we can also take it now to Revelation 13. Imagine, Marie, you show Whitney Webb and Catherine Fitz and others. Revelation 13 now, the end goal, verse 15 through 17. You won't be able to buy or sell except you go along with this mark of the beast. Now they are going to want to know, please educate us. What do you see? Your perspective, what is the mark of the beast? Because we see the monetary system being erected. And we can say to Whitney Webb, we can say to Catherine Fitz, what is the end goal of this digital-only monetary system? That is going to be programmable, surveillable. What is the end goal? And we can show them it's the mark of the beast. And now just imagine them saying, wait a minute now. So what is the mark of the beast? because these two women and others are great researchers. And now we can share with them, based on God's word, what the mark of the beast is. And it comes right back to the beast power. Marie, just imagine you saying to them, do you believe that Bible history will be repeated? How would you bring to them Genesis 47 with Joseph and the 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows? Marie.
Pastor, we didn't even discuss this together, and that was on my mind. God is so good. The Spirit of God is definitely working because, Pastor, the thing, what Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9 tells us, the thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And so what happened in Genesis 47 is the same thing that is going to happen in our day today. And, before you even get to where you were going, Pastor, I saw something that was very interesting, right? In Matthew chapter 24, the Bible tells us that in the last days, there's going to be wars, famines, pestilence, all of these things that are going to take place, right? I saw a link between an economic crisis and a famine, right? Because if you go back to Genesis 47, right, you saw that there was a famine that was taking place in verse 13, where it talks about, it says, and there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted for the reason of the famine. Now, if you look at verse 15, it says, and when money failed, it says, in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence, for the money faileth. So being able to show them that what happened in Genesis 47, right, this economic crisis leads to this slavery, right? Because isn't that what happened in Genesis 47? The people sold themselves. They sold their tangible assets, right? Their cattle, their land, even themselves. They sold themselves into slavery. And it goes back to what you were just saying about in Revelations 18, right? How the merchants were a part, and the souls of men, right, are being sold into slavery. So you can clearly see, if we were able to present it to them, how there is parallels between what happened then and what's to take place in our day as well.
Marie, we have some people in the chat saying, call-ins, please. So they want me to quickly open the line. Call in. Pastor, open the phone line. Hold 1 second. Safe to Serve International, those of you who are live with us. Hold 1 second. Marie, let's talk about stable coins and AI.
Yes. So in this final piece here for me, one of I found this article to be so interesting, and this is coming from the World Economic Forum. And what they're going to do is they're going to show us how there is this dangerous synergy between stable coins and AI. So let's just take a look at this article. The headline says, AI and stable coins, a pairing for a more intelligent era of online businesses. Much as we are seeing a convergence between the internet financial system and traditional ways of moving value, we are also seeing the rapid cross-pollination of stablecoins and AI. In many ways, these two seismic advances in technology work better together. Listen to this very carefully. It says, in addition, blockchain networks offer previously unimaginable levels of automation and efficiency through programmable smart contracts, which make it possible to design self-executing transactions that automatically take place once preset if then parameters are met. Now, that's a mouthful, right? And so I'm going to try to break this down, right? In essence, what they are saying is that with the implementation of a stablecoin, which is a digital dollar, right, and the AI infrastructure, they can create a system that is automated and programmable, right? So how does this work? So they input data on an if-then kind of preset into the system, and it's self-executing, right? So now I'm going to give you an example of what it means when they say an if-then parameter. So if the government gives, let's say, for instance, everyone 100 carbon credits, right? If you exhaust your 100 carbon credits, then the system will restrict purchases that would exceed your carbon allowance, right? So an example of this would be, right, if you run out of carbon credits, right, then the system automatically restricts your ability to be able to buy gas. So, and of course, this is self-executing, which means that they just create the system. There's no human, there's no third party, there's nothing. It's just a machine saying, I don't know what you did, but you ran out of your carbon credits, and so we're going to restrict your gas. This is what they're talking about putting together. This is what is going to happen. Remember, President Trump just spent, what it was, $500 billion on this Stargate project, which is this AI infrastructure. In addition to that, he just said that he's establishing the United States as the crypto reserve currency. I mean, I don't know how much plainer we can make it. They're putting these two systems together so that once they roll it out, they can manipulate it. Whitney Webb and Catherine Fitz just said that they are able to program, surveil, and also seize your assets once we transition into the system. It's plain if you want to see it.
Money of the beast system.
It is.
Here is Pippa Malmgren talking about the blockchain and how this type of money, which is CBDC and stable coins, will actually repudiate your freedoms. Watch this.
And it's not about the U.S. versus China. It's about what underpins a world order is always the financial system.
Clip 2.
I think we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money.
Isn't it startling? Marie, I'm going to go through these points rather quickly and just send the alert if you want to chime in. Notice here, blockchain. CBDC is what? Blockchain. Stable coins. Blockchain. Birds of a feather flock together, two wings of the same unclean bird. Are we ready for this new world order? Marie, here's Trump again stating why he's against CBDC. Look at the red words underlined in the middle. He says, listen, if we were to, you know what, let me read this. Trump said a so-called digital dollar would be very dangerous, claiming it could create a situation where money suddenly disappears from people's bank accounts, he told Fox News. Context, CBDC. But notice, the stable coins, the same effect. And I won't play the Klaus Schwab clip. You know what? Here's Klaus Schwab.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole. The COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison.
And Murray, the reason why I'm doing this, we already laid down the principles. This last segment is simply giving the additional, to augment the previous statements. Not everybody watches every video we produce and publish. Some folks have never seen these points connecting for the big picture. Watch this.
Name it. Yeah. I mean, imagine a scenario where there's a virus, a tech virus, that attacks your mobile phones, logs it into your bank account, and then siphons your money away. Jeez. Now, imagine the aftermath is the government might come out, the Federal Reserve might come out, or big banking associations may come out and say, hey, we understand that millions of lives have been affected. You know, you may have lost hundreds to thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars due to this tech virus, and we can't seem to control it, whatever. And they might come out and say, hey, we will replace every one of your dollars and we'll give it back to you in CBDC.
Not only CBDC now, but also stable coins now. Friends, if this were to happen, this harbinger occur on the Trump administration and they launch the stable coins would be the currency that they would try to pay you back with. How many people do online banking? In 2024, it was 71% of the population. Just imagine that. Trump will be the crypto president of the world. Here it is.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Thursday to create a cryptocurrency task force. The group will develop new regulations for digital assets and explore building a national cryptocurrency stockpile. This move follows Trump's promise to revamp U.S. crypto policy and position himself as a crypto president.
That is striking. And Marie, if you remember Nancy Pelosi, what she stated during the pandemic, when there was a crisis, I'm going to clip through, people could pause the video and read that. When there was a crisis and people didn't have access to goods and services, people lost their livelihood, had no money, Nancy Pelosi actually stated, we can assist the less fortunate with monies from CBDC, a digital dollar. That's what she said. In the same clip, she went on to say, not now. Let's wait until in the future. And now we have this president rolling out his version called stablecoin that will do the same. What's the point? All they need is a crisis. Cryptocurrencies, traceable and programmable. It's right there in print, black and white. Here's where I'm going to connect now the papacy. The IMF actually stated the cryptocurrencies are programmable.
And finally, the third way we think CBDC can improve financial inclusion is through what we call programmability.
And notice, if you don't go along with the system, you will be excluded. Marie, who is behind the IMF launching a digital dollar? It's right there in print. It's the Pope of Rome. And the Pope said this must be done post the pandemic. And he was talking to two groups, the World Bank and the IMF. And afterwards, the IMF launched now a digital ID system, a digital public infrastructure globally. It's right there. And the director of the IMF is on record saying the IMF will implement the Pope's priorities, and she itemized the economy. A new economic order, the new world order. Marie, this last segment now is what I'm going to use as another tool to awaken those who are sleeping and those who are cynical to what we are sharing today and refuse to believe. And get ready. Do you realize you have the EU pushing for a digital dollar? America is about to launch its own. The UN is saying it must be done by 2030. What year did I just say? 2030. When is the EU going to launch its own? The deadline?
This year.
2025, October. The Trump administration wants that bill passed this year for stablecoins. It's 2025. The UN said 2030 is their deadline. And the 2030 agenda, number one, is digital currency. That's number one of their 17 goals. Number one, digital currency. And without it, you cannot access these things on your screen right here. That's 2030. Friends, we're in 2025. In other words, they give you a date. I'm wondering, are they trying to implement the policies before the public date they have given to the world to catch many of us off guard? Marie.
Yes, Pastor. I was just thinking, to myself, even with what we previously discussed, going back to Genesis 47, imagine, if you were in Egypt and providentially God gave you the opportunity to see what was going to happen ahead of time, right? Wouldn't you shun the system? Wouldn't you do everything in your power to prepare or get out of the system? What's interesting also is that the children of Israel, while the Egyptians were selling themselves into slavery, do you know where they were? They were in the country of Goshen, right? And God had providentially provided for them. And so it's the same thing with us. We have been blessed with the Bible and the spirit of prophecy that has told us years ago that these things were going to take place. And I guess it baffles my mind that there are people who had the opportunity to be able to implement those things, but they choose not to for whatever reason. But again, we're seeing how these movements are taking place so quickly, it may catch you off guard. And now contrast that with what was happening in Jerusalem, right? They knew, Jesus told them that when you see the sign to flee, for whatever reason, some chose not to heed the warning, and they were left inside of Jerusalem. When the gates closed, there was no second chance. There was no opportunity to flee. So again, we're seeing these things, not to scare you, but to show you that it is time to set your affairs in order. I just wanted to mention that point there.
Okay, here is Catherine Fitz to augment what you just said.
And the reality, as the financial system gets more controlling and more invasive, it's a little bit like bringing up a corral around us. And CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and vaccine passports or digital IDs are sort of the last shutting of the gate.
Now, when Catherine Fitz made that point about CBDCs, talking about a digital dollar, there was no movement to implement what is called stablecoins. If there was, then Catherine Fitz would have added CBDCs and or stablecoins. It's the last shutting off the gate. When you shall see, there it is, when you shall see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, know the desolation thereof is nigh. Marie, here's my closing point. Christ cleansed. I'm going to make a connection here between the term stablecoins with Christ cleansing the temple just before his earthly ministry came to an end. Christ cleansed the temple twice. At the beginning of his earthly ministry, at the close of his earthly ministry, and he was saying the people did not recognize him, accept him, because of the merchants and the priests, the buying and selling in the temple. He cleansed the temple of the money changers, the bankers. Do you know what inspiration says? That the money they were using was called a coin. A coin. For the convenience of these, here all foreign money was exchanged for the coin of the sanctuary. And it was required that all foreign coin should be changed for a coin called the temple shekel. Meaning, friends, I'm not sure if you're seeing what I'm saying and what I'm reading. That means it was a centralized currency. It doesn't matter what you spend outside there. When you come here, everything must be transferred into this currency. It was a one currency system, this coin. The money changing gave opportunity for fraud, extortion. It had grown into a disgraceful traffic, which was a source of revenue for the priests. 689-777-5198. 689-777-5198. I want to hear from you. What's your feedback from what we covered in the lesson? Marie, as you're calling in, any closing words?
Pastor, with everything that was said today, it's time again. We say this every time we gather, that it's time for us to implement those 5 keys of survival. I was reading this morning in the Spirit of Prophecy today, what she says, move steadily forward in the path of duty and leave the consequences with God. One of the remarks that you had made before, you said that whether we stay or whether we leave, there's going to be consequences. If we stay in the cities, there's going to be consequences, right? We may be caught in the siege, right? We will be caught in the siege if we're left in the cities. If we leave, there's going to be consequences. There's difficulties. There's things that we're going to face, but we are to leave those consequences with God. The other encouraging thing about this is that God's biddings are also his enablings. And if he has asked us to do something, believe him, take him at his word, and follow. There's another beautiful quote in the Spirit of Prophecy, Patriarchs and Prophets, page 290, paragraph 3. She says, the path where God leads the way may lie through the desert or the sea, but it is a safe path. And I love that. Because, with all of the things that we're seeing, again, as I said, we're going to be confronted with difficulties, but God has promised that if we're following him, it is a safe path, and so we're going to have to make some serious decisions, some sacrifices, do some things that we may not be comfortable with doing. But if we know that the Lord is prayerfully leading us, if we're fasting and seeking his face, I believe, brothers and sisters, that we can, by God's grace, be prepared for this soon coming crisis that is right before us. They're talking about this year. This year, we're transitioning to a digital system. And again, it's going to take a little bit of time once they establish the framework. But remember what happened during the pandemic, right? It didn't take very long for us to go from a free society to a tyrannical society, and it felt like almost overnight. Imagine what's going to happen once they have full control of the economic system. Sister White says that, we're not going to be able to buy and sell. Every earthly support is going to be removed. It's here, brothers and sisters. It's here. It's time to get ready.
Caller, you're live on Safe to Serve. What's your feedback today? Caller? Okay. 689-777-5198. As this slogan say, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And that's why we need to implement these 5 keys of survival and not wait until it is too late. Caller, you're live on Safe to Serve. What's your feedback from the lesson today?